Hello, my fellow Woo watchers. It's gonna be my first time making a video on this topic for this game, and please correct me down in the comments if I'm wrong, right? I don't actually mean like, your opinion, but like if I bring up some numbers that are incorrect, please enlighten me, right? So, from what I've seen from calcs, I need to preface this before I talk about this. Kartethia's best in slot team is around like, I don't know, 35% stronger than a Carlotta team, right? Please, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that. If not, that's what I'm going to be basing this video around on. So, horizontal versus vertical investments for WUWA. Is it as obvious as HSR? In my opinion, in HSR, horizontal investment is always king, right? However, what about in WUWA? I also think horizontal investment is better temporarily. At the beginning of the game, just build up 3 good teams, I'd say, because of the leak of us getting 2 new floors in Hazard. We've already seen it in game. It's guaranteed to come out. We're getting 2 new Hazard floors. So before, when you needed 2 decent teams, now you need 3, right? So 3 decent teams, get that on your account, and afterwards, I'd actually argue vertical investment is better, right? Oh my god, Gabby, why do you think this is? Well, it's because in WUWA, the power creep isn't as bad, right? It is there, despite what people try to argue, same with the HP inflation. However, it is nowhere near as bad as the likes of HSR. In HSR, new version DPS beats like an old version E2 DPS. So I almost always recommend horizontal investment alongside this, and game shilling makes it even easier for the newer DPS to dominate, right? But in WUWA, as far as I know, Carlotta is around 30-35% weaker than a cart, right? Why does this matter? It matters because we already have leaks for Augusta. As of current, she does not break the ceiling of the game. It is still Kartethia. And then in 2.7, if I remember correctly, we are getting Galbrena and as well as Qyuan. And I don't think either of these two, that was unexpected. I don't think either of these two are going to break the ceiling either, which means we are going to go 10.5 months with Carlotta being 30-35% weaker than the ceiling of the game's DPS, right? Or actually, I shouldn't say 30-35% weaker. I should say Kartethia is 30-35% stronger, right? So, because this is the case, in my opinion, it is just better to go for sequence investment. Something quite common with WUWA these days is that even though newer DPSs can be stronger than older ones, they kind of come in a package deal, a best in slot support and massive jumps in their signature weapons. So if you already own a full Carlotta team, it might genuinely just be more worth it for you to pull weapon plus sequence, or pull S2 or even up to S3, right? Because S3 is a pretty massive jump even compared to the likes of S1 and S2 for a Carlotta, right? And this is 2 or 3 cost, or 2 or 3 limited more, right? And if you fell for the FOMO of Kartethia, you pull Kartethia, let's say S0R1 and Chacona S0R0, that is also 3 limited. And I can almost guarantee that that team will perform worse than an S3, what's it called? An S3 Carlotta, right? Or an S2 Carlotta in her best in slot team. And so this is why I think vertical investment does become better at some point, because the power creep isn't all that rampant. These sequence jumps giving you some nice, damage boosts matter more in this game than they do in the likes of HSR, right? For example, Carlotta is like a pretty bad example for version 2 characters. Augusta gets like a 50% increase at S2 versus S0. Same for Zanny, same for Cartethia. I think Cart might actually be like 60, right? Or late 50s if I remember correctly. A lot of these characters, if you own them, instead of going into a completely new comp and pulling 2 new characters plus signatures, it's not only usually cheaper to go into sequence investment for a DPS team you already own, but you'll probably end up, you know, getting more return for your investment, and that older team will be stronger because of the sequence investment compared to grabbing that newer team, right? So this is actually what I plan to do. I plan to pull Augusta S0R1 and then Yuno S0R0, and then I plan to pull likely S2 Augusta on rerun, right? The reason I'm pulling Yuno is because I need to free up SK, as this account doesn't have a Varina. Please don't ask, right? I use the selector on Calcharo. It's whatever, right? So I have no Varina. SK is wanted in basically every team possible. Yuno is an absolute blessing for me if I pull Augusta, because then I can just run Augusta in her best in slot team, and alongside this, I can as well, what's it called? I can as well put SK on other teams, right? Because I have an S2 SK, by the way, so, you know, W's on that. So that's my quick opinion on horizontal versus vertical investment in WUWA. I think horizontal is better for building up to 3 teams, and once you build up to 3 teams, I actually think vertical is better, jumping from S0 to S2 for a lot of these DPSs. And the only way I can be proven wrong is if Kuro starts introducing some of the most diabolical power creep the gacha scene has ever seen, right? Like, it would have to be very fucking bad. But as I mentioned earlier, 10.5 months worth of patches, and Cartethia will continue to be the ceiling of DPS in this game, or like, you know, the Giga CN sweats, you know, the sweaty rotators make the argument of Zanny, right, for Nightfalls. But usually, for most players, Cartethia is better than Zanny, right? So do keep that in mind, that I do believe just going into sequence investment for older DPSs is more worth it because of the way Kuro sells new characters. Even though they are overall stronger, they need their full best in slot team, and this usually includes a niche new best in slot support tailor-made for them. I mean, we're seeing this bullshit right now with Augusta and Yuno, where Yuno can give an extra 40% damage amplification to Augusta, and she literally can't give it to anyone else in the game. I feel like they're not going to slow down on this, and they'll just keep doing this for every single new DPS. So if I'm right, then this means that you're really gonna rather go into sequence investment for older characters, right? On top of this, may I add, this game, before I forget, does allow you to buy sequences with your corals. This is worth around, I believe, 45 limited pulls, and you don't have to deal with the bullshit of a 50-50, and you just instantly grab it, and that's a free sequence, right? So if you save up these corals, you could even pull on other characters and wait for an Augusta rerun. When her rerun is around, just get a sequence for free, right? And it's only going to cost you technically 45 pulls, a massive advantage that this game has that isn't talked about enough. So you could save even more than I'm actually arguing for, right? Like, I'm comparing 3 limited, you know, 2 limited when you're pulling new things versus going into sequence investment. But if you already have and save up enough corals, you're spending, like, on average, half the pulls compared to someone who goes, you know, full in on actually pulling on the banners for sequences, right? So keep that in mind. This game also has that advantage for going S0 to S2 with sequences. You can just buy them from the shop worth 45 limited pulls, and all you need to do maybe is pull 1 actual sequence through the banner, and that's basically like 1.5 limited, and you're already outperforming this newer team that came out a year later because you didn't pull their full best in slot team, right? And even if you did, your sequence investment on your older team would outperform it, right? So let me know what you guys think about my opinion down in the comments. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Honestly, I don't think I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. Please say it in the comments if I'm missing something. However, I think it's actually pretty realistic for average savers to have that many corals because of the fact that this game releases no fucking 4-stars, no different to HSR, right? At this point, getting a 4-star literally just means a free pull refund, right? Especially for a lot of veteran players. So getting that extra 1 or 2 sequences for way less compared to pulling on banners makes a pretty big difference in this argument, right? Love you all. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great night. Peace out.